Once you're done paying, there's like an actual cost. It'd be a really cool
Why would
story
you
to
do
tell.
that?
Someone asked me for help on it. I was like,
Who is doing
Usually
that?
my dad got sued when he had an accident. He like rear-ended somebody and the car in front of them got hit. And one of the things in the lawsuit, this man like said that he couldn't do his husbandly duties.
I had no idea what she was doing. I was like, okay, we need to know where the camera was.
Okay,
Well, then, sorry.
so
My dad.
we have. Is it going?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Are
Are they in the video?
Yeah, those two are.
So I'll have to get maybe Rick.
No, you're good.
I don't know. I don't know if I put my face on the
They're very
internet.
nice.
Verbal consent
And then
works
it's
in
that
Indiana.
So like, if I can put my hood up, I'm like, I'm.
But I think I might need it from the parents. How old are you guys?
I'm 17, but
Okay, then yeah.
there.
I don't know that. You can't just say
No,
that.
I did say it. You have it on camera, actually.
All right. So a couple classes ago, we talked about absolute max and mins, and at the time, I mentioned relative max and mins, but the whole lesson was about absolute. And we found critical numbers, and then we plugged endpoints and critical numbers into the original function. It just looked for the highest value. You guys remember doing that?
Yeah.
So that is what absolute max and mins are. They can occur at critical numbers or endpoints. Today's lesson is all about finding relative max and mins. That means in like a local subgroup of the interval, is there a highest point or is there a lowest point, like a hump or a valley or something like that. They can only occur at critical numbers. I mentioned this in that lesson a couple times ago. They can only occur at critical numbers, not endpoints. Endpoints throw out the window in this lesson. They're irrelevant, okay? They're important for like what interval you're on, but they can never be relative extrema, okay? Not every critical number yields a relative max or min though. And I have some examples of that, kind of this graph right over here. I have a lot of funny business going on over here, all right? I guess not a lot of funny business, just one funny business right here. That would be the only thing I would say is any funny business when you have that sharp turn right there, that cusp. Okay. So I have a few things going on. I have an absolute min, notice that's at an endpoint. I have a relative maximum. I have a relative minimum. This point right here, one particular spot can be an absolute max and a relative max. And that one is right there. Okay. Now notice what all of the derivative values are of your relative extrema. So the derivative right here, the slope is 0, but so this would be a critical point. Like if it said find any critical numbers, this would be one. But notice this is not a relative max or min. So that's what I mean by this third point right here. Not every critical number is a relative extrema. We are going to have to do some tests today. We're going to find critical numbers. Then we're going to have to see, okay, is that number a relative max or min? We'll have some analysis to do. This right here is a relative max, and the derivative is 0. This is a relative min. The derivative is 0. What's the derivative here at C4? Undefined. Remember, your critical numbers are anywhere that f prime is 0 or undefined. C5, f prime is 0. And so I'm just showing you guys that your relative max and mins, they have to occur at critical numbers. But not every critical number is a relative max or min. That's the analysis we'll do today. Notice what's happening here, where this function is increasing from a to c1. This function is increasing the whole time. What's going to be true about its derivative? It's positive. Where a function is increasing, its derivative is positive. Right here, from c1 to c2, f prime is going to be positive. F is increasing this whole time, positive. On the other side of c2, now f is decreasing this whole time, f prime is negative. Then increasing, f prime is positive. Then decreasing, so negative. You notice I started to run out of room on my intervals. And then decreasing, negative. And the reason I have this here is to kind of show you what our analysis is going to be to find where relative extrema occur. Notice what happens where the relative extrema exists, what's happening at that point to f prime. It's switching. And that's what we're going to be after. Does f prime change sign? That's the analysis. If you look right here at this relative max, f prime changes from positive to negative. So we have a relative maximum. Here, f prime changes from negative to positive. That yields a min. From positive to negative, maximum. Notice at the other critical numbers, like right here, this is a critical number, but notice f prime does not change sign. It's positive and then positive again. So our analysis today is going to be at what critical numbers does f prime change sign? That's the whole idea. Okay? Which leads to the first derivative test. Anybody think we had a test today when you saw the Canvas page?
Me in the
I'm not
morning
nervous,
for like
yeah.
0.5 seconds.
People like
I got
when
nervous for a hot second.
yeah, when I publish it, people always come in and like, do we have a test today?
I'm not
I love that.
Some funny business.
That is funny business. Nonsense. All right. So did you hear why Stony was on lockdown?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
What did you hear?
It was because there was
I heard. I just didn't know if it was the same.
there was a lady that saw a suspicious man walking around with what she thought was a rifle.
Mhm.
So she pulled into the church parking lot that's right there and called the police. And so the police got there and they couldn't find him, and they knocked on a neighbor's door and they said that they saw a guy that matched the description, but they thought he was just carrying an umbrella. So we don't know if it was an umbrella or a rifle, but there was a
Oh, my
suspicious
wife
man.
said it, and she could be wrong.
Yeah.
She said it turned out it was an umbrella,
I don't know.
but I don't know. So
I
she
just-
said
that's
someone
what I
thought it was a
heard.
rifle. They called the police, and then it turned out to be an umbrella.
I don't know what it actually was, but
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
It was a
Yeah.
rifle.
Could you imagine, you're just like walking down the street with an umbrella and pull out the rain?
Well, what's
And
the
someone
weirdest-
calls the cops
yeah.
on you.
Yeah.
There was
Three
no
cars
wind,
show up.
though.
Still,
It's like-
still, like,
Oh, that's
It
true.
was a beautiful day.
Ooh, my
Why
wife
did
was
they
having
have an
rain.
umbrella?
Umbrella gun.
Could have been a vampire. Could have been a vampire.
What is this?
Because like, why would, I don't know.
That's why we
You
couldn't
see
find
someone
him if
carrying
it was
like
a
just a
vampire.
black stick.
Yeah, it's
I probably would think it was an umbrella and not a rifle. I
Maybe
would
he just
think.
picked up the stick he found on the ground unlocked it.
That's a man thing right there.
It is very much so.
Mhm.
Sounds sexist.
Oh, was it wrong?
Mr. G,
Have you ever gone hiking and picked up the stick and like, yeah, now this.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. 100%. But that doesn't mean that girls don't do that too.
To be
Well,
fair,
it's
I've
like-
never done that.
Have you ever
Yeah, I've
done
never
that? Did you go
done
hiking with your
that.
wife?
I've never good stick.
When you did
No.
that? And did she pick up a stick
My
too?
wife has never picked up a stick.
Exactly. See?
It's just,
You're fine on that.
Yeah.
But that's only 3 cases. Like, that doesn't.
Well, I
It
had my
applies to
stick.
everyone. I've never picked up a stick.
No, I had my stick. Are you kidding me? I found a stick on the ground. I picked it up, and I literally kept it in my backyard for like 2 years.
yeah.
It was the perfect stick.
We need to get Ferris on this.
I'll talk to him.
Okay, so the first derivative test says, I didn't finish either one of these statements yet, but if f prime changes from positive to negative at x equals c, which is our analysis, then x equals c is a relative maximum. F prime changes from positive to negative, and think about why. That would mean f is increasing then decreasing. Like that's what's happening. And vice versa, if f prime changes from negative to positive at x equals c, then x equals c is a relative minimum. So with relative extrema, it starts the same way as absolute. We're going to find critical numbers, okay? But we're not going to plug these numbers into the original function. It's a completely different analysis after that. But we need to think, okay, where's our derivative 0? Where is our derivative undefined? And then the other thing we need to consider, and I feel bad because I didn't add one on the examples, but I'm going to show you an example from the book where this happens. You also need to consider where f is not continuous. Okay, that's something that any funny business are things that we need to consider. Anywhere the derivative is 0, undefined, and then also anywhere f is not continuous. And I'll again show that. So example 1 says, find any relative max or mins of f. All right, so we are going to start by finding critical numbers. That is step 1. That step is critical. Thanks.
There's too much funny business going on in this class.
Too much. All right. So f prime is 3/4 x squared minus 3. And I said we want to figure out where f prime is 0 or undefined. Well, it's never undefined, but we can figure out where it's 0. Let's do it. Is it? I'm going to take your word. You guys can solve equations, right? Now this is, in terms of like, if you're doing an FRQ, you don't need to show a lot of your work. What they would want to see is the equation that you are solving. They would want to see you set this equal to 0 and then write this. In terms of how you get here, they don't care. Same with if it's a calculator active question. Like, this has nothing to do with this lesson today, but let's say they give velocity. Okay, and they give some random equation, and they say, where's velocity equal to 0, or something like that. They say, where's the thing stopped, or whatever the question is. And it's a calculator active question. You're allowed to solve any equation with your calculator. Like, you can find x-intercepts. But they would want you, like, instead of just putting, like, t equals 1, they would want you to show setting this equal to 0, showing the equation that you're solving to yield those results. You don't need to show any work to solve, but always set up the equation that you are solving to get your answers. So now here's our analysis. Here's how we figure out if f prime changes sign. We're going to do a sign chart. Okay, an f prime sign chart. So off to the side now, here's how we set up our sign charts. And you're going to set up a bunch of sign charts in this chapter because we're going to do this with f prime, and then we're eventually going to do this with f double prime when we get into concavity. So the sign charts become a big deal. So we are going to do an f prime sign chart. And what we're going to do is we are going to plug any critical number or any discontinuity on f onto our sign chart. And we just have to make sure we put it in least to greatest order. And so here's our analysis. For if the only critical numbers are 2 and -2, then these are the only places where f prime can change sign. Because if there was another place where f prime could change sign, we would have found another critical number. Okay, what I'm saying is this. To the left of -2, f prime will always be the same sign, all the way to negative infinity. Between -2 and 2, f prime is always going to have the same sign. And then from 2 to infinity, f prime always has the same sign. So we just need to figure out what sign is f prime in all three of these intervals. So we have test intervals. You guys can pick any number you want in all of these intervals to figure out what the sign of f prime is. So when we did absolute max and mins, we would take our values and plug it into f and find like the biggest values, right? Well now, if I'm trying to find the sign of f prime in all these intervals, I'm going to pick numbers in these intervals and plug them into f prime to see what the sign is. So if I want to pick a number less than -2, what's probably your first thought?
Less than -2.
I
was just thinking of,
man.
I was thinking of 0 because you could just plug it in and get
We'll get there in the middle for sure.
-3.
Okay, yeah, -3, -4. Me, I would do -1 billion.
That works too.
And the reason I say that, I don't say that really jokingly, but if you, sometimes, you know, what matters is not the number that you get when you plug these numbers into f prime. The only thing that matters is if that number is positive or negative. That's all that matters. So if you plug in -3, now I have to sit there and do some calculation. Be like, okay, what's -3 squared? That's 9. What's 9 times 3/4? What do I get if I take that number minus 3? Right? Now you actually have to be careful, like, is it positive or negative? But if I plug in -1 billion, you don't actually need to plug it in. But in my mind, if I'm like, if I plug -1 billion in for x, that's going to be a huge positive number minus 3 is positive. Like, very quickly, I can figure out my sign. So my point is, if you're allowed to plug in extreme values to figure it out very quickly, then do it. You're all good with mental math. You could plug -3 in and get the answer. I mean, it's an extreme case. But either way, it's positive. F prime is positive in that interval, which means f is increasing all the way until you get to -2. Then I plug in a number between -2 and 2. 0. If you can ever plug 0 in, I would plug 0 in. Easy analysis. If I plug 0 in for x, negative. And that means f is decreasing. And then if I plug in a number bigger than 2, like 100 trillion, yeah, positive. What I'm after is, where does f prime change sign? That's my analysis. And so I can see f prime changes from positive to negative right here at -2. That means -2 is going to be where a relative maximum is. Right here, f prime changes from negative to positive. So f's going down then up. The reason you don't have to draw these arrows, But I like to just because I can actually see like what F's doing is going up and down. Like I can visually see it as a maximum and then a minimum. I can see it. So here's how I'll answer the question. I would say F has a relative max at x equals -2. And oftentimes, if this is a pre-response question, it'll say find any relative max. It'll say and justify your answer. Your justification doesn't need to be a lot. All you would say, I would say f has a relative max at x equals -2 because f prime changes from positive to negative at x equals -2. That would be your justification. Just a real quick, brief statement. I've been told that the graders on the AP test will not even grade your sign charts. Like this is kind of for you to organize your work, but this is what they're after more so. Like, do you understand that? I would do a sign chart. I'm not telling you not to, but that's what I've been told. I can also see that F has a relative minimum here at 2. F has a relative min at x equals 2 because f prime changes from negative to positive. You can also use those symbols. I would say the number one mistake students make in their justifications are misusing the words negative and positive versus increasing, decreasing. Like those mean different things. And at this point, it's not hard to confuse them, but when we also then get into f double prime, that's when a lot of students start to misuse those words. So really make sure you understand, do you really mean to say the word positive, or do you mean to say the word increasing? Like be careful with your vocab.
So when you make a sign chart, when you figure out the first sign, don't you kind of just know what the other two signs are going to be?
No, because it could be positive question.
Well, more publicity, but you know that it will be positive again if it's double multiplicity, whereas you'll know they'll pass through if it's just single or odd multiplicity.
That's where your graphical analysis all comes into play. And that can help you like logically make sense of your answers, but that's not something you ever have to think about. But I don't think it's bad. That's like all your pre-cal graphical analysis understanding.
So if it's positive twice, then is it even a min or a max?
No, that's what I was trying to get at.
That first graph where it like goes
Yeah,
to like
that's
the
not-
0
that's
and
not
it keeps
true.
going up, it's not a max or a min, but it is 0. And so it would be a positive and then
I
a
see.
positive underside.
That's what I was trying to show on the initial graph, where this is not a relative max or min. F prime was positive, then positive. It didn't change sign.
I see.
All right. I want you guys to try example 2.
Oh, man.
That's what you need to say. Is it all well done?
This is the derivative though.
Luke, you at home, try this one.
Pause the video.
Pause now.
Well, he doesn't need to pause.
We're pausing.
Yeah, because you're all trying it too. You only have to pause it if I'm doing notes.
That's not the point.
Ooh, Mr. Crossley got back to me and said, is there a student teacher there? Do you have a student teacher?
Mr. Beasley?
Huh?
And Ben?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Said the student teacher wrote her pass.
Ah.
She signed in, but did not sign out.
I don't believe that. It's big.
I already wrote the login entry. I'm not gonna change it. I'll let them sort it out. I don't even know how to edit it.
Well, she didn't come back. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean the log entry, but I also put in there about her forging passes.
Oh.
That's no longer true.
Oh.
But oh well.
She's working. Oh, yeah, that's nice.
I don't feel bad. show up, you're
Oh
just
my
not
gosh,
gonna
I just did so much extra work.
Why? Did
I
you
gotta
take
get the graph. I just found out double prime.
That's what
Ah, that's what I was hoping was gonna happen.
At least I caught myself though.
I did. Yeah, I caught myself. I was like, look,
I'm so tired
It
right
worked. I just put this problem on the notes this morning, thinking I'm gonna get him.
now. You got me.
Yes.
Give me.
You happy now?
I am happy. It made my efforts worth it.
I'm so upset.
I won't forget this.
I don't like the answer. The answer doesn't make me happy, but.
Oh, see, I haven't worked it out yet. I saw the problem.
It's just kind of like that's like. It's like, why is that?
Mm.
No fan.
So it was a multiple choice question. Took the choices off.
Oh, well.
So I think that's why.
Yeah. So. No. I got that.
I put 0.5 into that. Since I would find everything else doesn't matter, it's always positive.
Tyler.
What did I screw up?
Positive.
Oh,
Does
I
it-
put it on
wouldn't
half
they-
instead of
wouldn't it be a
negative.
negative number times positive?
That would do it,
Wait.
I mean, negative times negative.
because that'll swap this.
Get negative times positive times negative.
Yeah.
If you, look at what the pretend that you turn it
I
into a full-on.
swapped
funnel
the
against
sign by
what it
accident,
is
but I
about
have to make it positive one half.
Positive x to the fourth.
Which would
Yeah, which we're gonna do that with the positive here.
Like a W.
Positive.
I'm so upset. All that beautiful work for nothing.
It wasn't for nothing. It was a good learning experience because you'll never make that mistake.
That's true.
That's why I did it. Not to like be a jerk, you know. So
Obviously that.
piece of advice on this one, and it's not one that you guys have to ever use, but there are times where they might give f prime and put like 5 factors in there. And so to keep track of the signs, I do this helps me. So first of all, I find 0, 3, and -1 are my critical numbers, right? They give f prime. That's a good thing. They did the hard part for you. And so when I do my sign chart, I like to take any factors or denominators, like any pieces of f prime, and list them kind of vertically here. You do not have to do this. But what helps me now is if I plug in -10, right, I don't have to remember what the signs are here. What I do is if I plug in -10, I know this first factor is negative. This is always positive. Regardless of what you plug into x minus 3 squared, that's always positive. And then this will be negative. And then I'm just like, what do I get if I multiply a negative, positive, and negative together, and I know it's positive? I don't have to keep track of the numbers. So this helps me organize my stuff. If I plug in -0.5, this is negative, this is positive, this is positive, and so that would be a negative number. And all the way down the road. So what does it ask for? Relative maximum. So at -1 would be your relative max. Not 0, 0 would be a minimum. What do you guys think? Delaney, did you end up getting there?
Yes.
So what did you do? Did you multiply it all out?
Yeah.
It was a tough one.
I also
It really wasn't that
multiplied
bad
all the way
multiplying it
down.
out.
Not to find derivatives, but so that I could find whether it be negative or positive, because I wasn't thinking straight about signs. So I just multiplied it out and plugged it
You'd only need to do the first one though. Because it would just be, you'd have an x squared term times another x times another x, you'd be an x to the 4th. You could do it that way.
Yeah.
All right, now the third one. For what value of x does this have a relative maximum? Do they give you the derivative on this one?
No.
No. So now we have to find the derivative.
I can do that.
Uh-huh.
Do it. Yeah, I don't know the answer to this one either. I added this one. I changed all the notes up from what I've done in the past. I didn't like what I had. I like this better.
Do you?
Mm-hmm. What I had was a lot of the same type question. There wasn't anything different. I'll work it out too up here, but don't look. Don't peek. Did I do it right, Colin?
Looks kind of like
Can't see if I screwed up anything. The piece in the middle is not fun, like in between 7/3 and 3. But I guess you just have to know anything bigger than 7/3 is going to make 3x minus 7 possible. So I guess I made that tougher than it. I did, just for emphasis, not to forget about chain rule. The ones that are relevant to put there, but. So, a couple of things on this one. To find the derivative, don't forget about product rule. Number one, you have to use product rule. But number two, I put these times 1 here, just so you don't forget about chain rule. You don't have to do chain rules are relevant on these problems, but in case it's not irrelevant, have it on your mind. So I did product rule. X minus 2, the derivative of x minus 3 squared is derivative of the outside, inside stays the same, times the derivative of the inside. It just happened to be a 1. But I put it there because if it was 2x minus 3, then that would matter. So don't forget about it. I made a comment back in chapter 2, and we're talking about it now in AB. Like their assignment the other day, they had to find a lot of derivatives with product rule, quotient rule, chain rule, and there's a lot of factoring they ended up having to do. And I told them, this was just yesterday, I said, in the future, in the next chapter, you're going to then figure out what makes f prime equal 0. And the only way you could do it is through factoring. That's the only way you can solve these equations without a calculator. You have to be able to factor. So I factored an x minus 3 out of this term and this term. So I factored out a GCF. You put what's left over, and now I can see what makes f prime equal 0. 3 7/3, and now I do my sign chart analysis. And notice I put the x minus 3 and the 3x minus 7. That, for me, it just makes my analysis easier. That's up to you guys. Questions? Quiet today. Jackson, are you shy because the camera's on?
Yeah, I'm nervous.
I don't want one to think that I'm an idiot.
Is it still recording?
I looked a second
It's
ago.
coming. You did?
I'm pretty sure it is. Yep, it is.
It's clear?
30 minutes strong.
Okay. All right, the last one I'm going to do with you, and there's a reason why. You guys probably already know, maybe you already know what the answer is.
Yep.
Huh?
Yeah.
Are you messing with me?
Clearly one.
Huh? Okay. So,
It goes like this.
so anytime a question asks about a function having relative max or mins, or about that function increasing or decreasing, we are doing an f prime sign chart. It's the same analysis. We're going to do the same sign chart. We got to find critical numbers. We're just not after relative extrema at this point. That's not the reason why I'm doing this problem. So if it wants to know on what intervals is this function increasing, in my mind I'm like, okay, I want to know where's the derivative positive. That's an f prime sign chart problem. It's the same exact problem as relative extrema. So I find the derivative, set it equal to 0, I find my critical numbers, I get x equals 0, I do an f prime sign chart. And so then, my question is, on the left side of 0, f prime is positive, and on the right side of 0, f prime is positive. There's a reason why I'm doing this problem, not so much for the difficulty or because it's a different problem. It's because of how you write the interval or intervals of where f is increasing, and what's accepted on the AP test, and what happens. So if I were to say, hey guys, on what intervals is f increasing? Yeah?
Would you do like a parentheses with a negative infinity to a comma with 0, and then you would do close bracket, and you, or maybe
They would take, okay,
and
keep
then
going.
you basically do like a unity thing, and then you would do bracket with 0, and then comma and positive infinity, and then bracket with that.
So I used to allow my students to write this answer. Come to find out, so I am a part of this Facebook group where the people that grade the exams are on there and they answer questions all the time. And they said this probably wouldn't earn full credit. You might know why. It has nothing to do with the notation or anything.
Because it's a bracket and not a.
No, that's not the issue.
Is that technically?
It's still increasing through the 0.
It's increasing through the 0. And I'll explain what I mean by that, but the actual correct answer, which does earn the full credit, is f is increasing on negative infinity to infinity. And so I'm going to try to make this make sense by what the definition of increasing actually means. Because a lot of students are like, well, wait, how is it increasing at 0 if at 0 the slope is 0, right? It's not increasing. So if your function is continuous at this point, you blow right past it in your interval. And the reason is, if you think about f, and you think about, so f's going to do something like this. Levels out, goes like that. Right here, the slope is 0, horizontal. By the definition of increasing, what it means to increase, first of all, you increase on an interval. And so what that means is, to increase, that means if you pick any x value to the right of another x value, its y value will be bigger than the previous. That's what it means to increase. And that happens all the way through 0. Like, let's say I'm right here. Is this y value bigger than this y value?
Yeah.
Yes. So it increases from here to here. Is this y value here bigger than this y value?
Yeah.
Yes. So no matter what 2 points you pick along this entire function, pick any 2 points, the y value on the right will always be bigger than the y value on the left. So by definition of increasing, functions increase over an interval. So they say if your function is continuous at that value, you blow through it in your interval. Now if it's not continuous at that value, you have to split it up. Like for instance, this is one of the things I said I wish I had put on the notes in terms of like discontinuities. Let's say you had a graph that looked like this. Let's say you had, let's do this graph. So it does this, and then it does this. So this graph's obviously not continuous. The function is increasing here the whole time, and then it's increasing again, right? This graph is, you could think of it as increasing everywhere. But if I were to state the intervals on what this is increasing, for this one, like if I did a sign chart, guys, I would find 0 in the middle, I would do f prime, and I would get the same exact sign chart as that problem, but I would answer it completely different. Because f is not continuous here, I would say f is increasing on what you said, that first answer.
But wouldn't you use like open, like you'd use a parentheses instead of a bracket?
I always use parentheses. There's a lot of debate.
Right. I was just curious because I thought if you used a bracket, it was inclusion as that answer, and so I thought that using a bracket with unity in the middle is like the exact same thing as saying negative infinity to positive infinity, but with that one I would write it with like parentheses because technically that 0 doesn't exist. So
Yeah.
I would say it's up until that point, but not including. Whereas I thought if you use brackets, it would say up until that point and including.
I don't know
Okay.
the answer to that. All I know is they've said if your function's continuous through that point, just go. Yeah, and if it's not, then go. And the reason, so on this one, I would say from negative infinity to 0 and then 0 to infinity.
Yeah.
Now, also on the FRQs on AP, don't dwell over should I put a parenthesis or a bracket. There are right and wrong answers based on what they think and they believe, but they've also said they will not grade one way or the other. They won't count you wrong. And they say the main reason they won't count you wrong is they don't want to grade handwriting. Like, let's say you're writing really quickly because you're crunched for time, and you do something like, they don't want to be in the business of like, So they don't even like look at that. So don't dwell is my point. Don't sit there and waste time thinking. So when I write my answers, I just always use parentheses. I'm not sure if that's right or wrong, but that's just what I do.
So in order to not dwell, would it be best to write that tricky one so that they like?
No, because they're not going to count. They're not grading it.
Just in case though, just to throw them off.
Then
It's
sure.
their choice.
Have some funny.
Then sure, do some funny business. Yeah, do some funny business.
half bracket, half bracket.
All right.
Funniest class.
So,
He's the rational choice.
and also the reason on this one you wouldn't say negative infinity to infinity, even though like it's technically increasing the whole time, is because of the definition of increasing. Like if I would pick this point here versus this point here, this y value is less than this y value. So this is flat out wrong. It's not increasing the whole time, even though it's increasing on both sides of 0. Just little things to think about. All right.
That's weird.
You know, like.
No, I don't.
It was like the cube function, but it was like a jump discontinuity. How would that be written? Like if I'm increasing up to 0 and then like a jump.
I would split it up.
Okay.
Because technically though, wouldn't it still work though?
Yeah, I hear you.
Technically it would still, there's like discontinuity, but it would still be.
I hear you. And so I think to avoid any issues like that, they wouldn't put that on there, but I don't know the answer to that question.
By definition.
Stumped. Let me look at the definition. See, that's where definitions come into play. The definition of continuity and intervals.
I would think that that's true, because the reason the hyperbola doesn't work is because
We need
you
like
could test a point that's left of 0, that would be much higher than one right of 0, but.
we need an AP grader in class.
Get Dave over here.
Who?
Mr. Ferris.
Is he an AP grader?
Yeah.
Yeah, he does for stats. I don't know if he's done it the last couple of years, but
I don't think he has. That's
That's why all of his tests were off.
Any two numbers, x1 and x2, in the interval.
I bet they were similar, huh?
Man,
It was.
see, this would make me think
That's on
you
the
would
record,
not
that's
split it
on
up.
YouTube.
By the definition of increasing, decreasing, this would make me think you wouldn't split it up, but I'm really not sure.
Any two numbers.
F is increasing on an interval if for any two numbers in the interval where one value to the right of the next, its y value is bigger than the previous.
So that means that you wouldn't have to break it up then.
That's how I would
That's
see
how I
that.
would interpret it.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Last one. Last one. So I'm gonna have you guys you could work together on this one, but I am gonna have a few people come up and put their answers on the board.
Oh,
I
nice.
used to like it when you did that.
You used to like it?
Well, I haven't been in your class for the whole year, but
So I'm gonna give you a few minutes here. It's kind of hard to see. It's on the notes, but trying to get it zoomed in as much as I can. There we go. So I'm gonna give you 8 minutes. What's that?
Are all the units one?
Yes. And there's no funny business.
No fun business?
Like down here when it says G double prime of 2.5,
It's where you think.
like it's what you think is happening, yeah. Like I'm not gonna say tricked you, sucker.
Maybe you would.
But it,
2, 3, 4 people. 5 people.
6 people. You're gonna come up.
It's like half the class.
Half the class will be coming up. I think Luke is just gonna fast forward through all this.
Now he'll be working
Nah,
that.
he'll be listening to you. You keep this out.
You think he's just gonna be sitting there watching this part?
Yeah.
Or do you think he'll try the problem?
He'll probably try to throw him.
He's the type of guy that tried the problem.
He can tell us after he watches it, comes back, and then we'll know.
He'll be like, I tried it, I heard you guys.
Oh, goodness.
But,
Me?
yeah, you know.
I'm just sleepy.
I like it.
I wonder why.
I don't know, I couldn't tell you. I do not know.
I justified. Just kidding, I hate coffee.
You hate coffee.
Really hate coffee.
I didn't drink coffee until I was about 23.
Yeah. I'll get like a mocha latte just for like the vibes.
Yeah.
I don't like the way it tastes, but
I'm addicted to it now. I don't like how it tastes either.
oh, it tastes awful.
But if I don't
Like, if you
drink
have coffee,
it,
makes
I'm
no
just
sense
like
to me.
grumpy and have a
Yeah.
headache and don't feel good.
Yeah, I want to not get to that point.
Yeah.
It's my
Yeah.
Guys
goal.
are the same place.
I regret ever
Ours
drinking
look like
coffee.
these. For no.
I'm addicted to chais. I
I'm just
love
trying to have a head
chai
right.
Yeah, I never do that.
Abysmal.
But every morning I have 2 cups of coffee and then I bring my travel cup. So I have like 3 cups. Just black, there's no cream. sugar.
Ugh, I can't do that. Like I can't.
When I first started, I would put stuff in it to make it taste better, and then it just started being too sweet, so I just kept going back.
No such thing.
Alright. So I'm gonna have some people come up and put these answers up here. So I'm gonna have 2 different people come up and put their answers on A. So Riley, give me a number between 4 and 9. 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you get where g of x is increasing and justify. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You get where g is decreasing and justify on part A. Yep. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, go up there. You can do it off to the side over here. You get part B, identify any relative extrema.
Okay.
That's all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You get part B on maxes and justify. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You get part B any mins and justify. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You get part C. I feel like I had one other person else in there. But I don't know, that's
An optimal seat here. We're in the middle of all of it. I think I got C right, but I'll be honest. So my guesstimating's a little
I thought it was in
rough. Didn't probably conclude well when I first did, so now I'm just losing my heart.
Oh, I read. Oh,
What'd you do wrong? Did you think that was G?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't know.
So, no.
It's a rookie mistake that you'll never make again.
I did it twice today now, so I can't say that I'll never do it again.
No, I can say that.
I hope so.
Mr. Brown.
Any D&D this weekend going on?
Hopefully.
Big
He
campaign?
gets mad that I work on Sundays, even though I'm a sane person. Everyone else, for some reason, works on Saturday nights.
Why don't you do it like Saturday afternoon?
Because Jackson
Yes.
is.
I work.
Is that
Damn.
Why do you guys work on Saturdays?
Just quit all your
That to me
jobs.
is the dumbest thing.
Somebody else works on Saturday.
No one else works on Saturdays, it's just those two.
And I have soccer and I sometimes work Saturdays.
Why in the world would you work on a Saturday?
That's the least opposite day.
Or just do it like really late Saturday night after somebody's done working.
How would you work?
I mean, I only do it because I gotta have time to do homework during the week. So that's why I work on Monday and Friday, because then I have time.
I like having my weekends.
But-
I just work,
too,
I work
but
every
like,
weekday.
but like, why would you work on a Saturday? That is the
Why
worst
would
day.
you work on a Sunday? It's the Sabbath.
I don't
That's
care.
what you plan on.
Okay, I lost track of who put what answers where, but,
Yeah, I put mine in the wrong section.
so all intervals where G is increasing or decreasing. Oh, that answer, that's
That moves down.
what I was, okay, I'm good.
I made it to Daisy.
Gotcha. I didn't see the arrow, that's
Yeah.
why I was confused, but
Yeah.
you're all good.
Okay.
So for A, identify all intervals where G is increasing or decreasing. So decreasing from negative infinity to -3, and then right here, this is what I was talking about, from 1 to infinity. Don't put from 1 to 5 and then 5 to infinity, because this is, if G prime exists here, then G is continuous there. So there's continuity there at 5, so blow past it. Very good. Because G prime is negative. Now this is very, very ticky-tacky. I don't know how they would grade this, and if you guys wrote this, it happens here too, on your test, I would probably like write it in for you, but not take off. But like when I read this, in my mind, I read this as like G prime is always negative. Like that's what this statement is saying. Same thing here. And then on the flip side, this person's saying G prime is always positive.
Well, it's implied like on the interval.
But you can't
Not
apply though. You
on.
gotta
See,
say.
that's the thing. I don't know. Like, if you say because G prime's negative, in my mind, G prime's not always negative. You know what I mean? Like, just be careful. I'm not saying they wouldn't give you credit. I'm just saying, be careful.
Or you
Yeah, or at least say like,
on
Here.
that interval. Just,
like at least say like a little. But I would write like because G prime is negative on these intervals, because G prime is positive on this interval. Like that's how I finish it. That's why when I wrote the other ones for like this one, relative max at 1 because G prime goes from positive to negative. I would finish that with saying at x equals 1 or something. Again, I'm not saying you wouldn't earn credit, but I would just be careful because 100% you earn credit if you put it, right? I can't say with 100% you get credit if you don't. I can just say probably. This one I take issue with. Not for a huge reason, but a reason. And they wouldn't give full credit for this, I know for sure.
Is it because I said it?
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
This word you, yeah, I was kind of mad when you told me to fix it because I wanted it to happen. I was like, dang it. And then I looked over at Jackson, he put it, and I was like, yes. So, because it is a thing that people do and it's wrong. Never use the word it. Never. Big fat no-no in this class. Unless you've already like defined it previously, that's fine.
it equals.
So, always name your functions. Never say it, never say slope. I know like all of this we've been doing is like slope. Never use that word. Use f prime, g prime, the function. Never use slope. If you're writing the word slope, in their mind when they grade, they're going to say the slope of what? Because there's f prime, f double prime, like what slope are you referring to? So always name the function. Never say the graph. So these are kind of 3 things to avoid. Never say it, never say slope, and never say the graph. Because the graph of what? Right? Like there's a lot of things going on. You're talking about the graph of f, or g prime. Always say the function you mean. So that is the only thing I take issue with. And then the one down here, this does equal 0. And so this is g prime. G double prime is referring to the slope at this point. Not the y value, but the slope. So g double prime is the slope of g prime. That's a horizontal tangent. 0. Questions? Word. Happy Friday.
So with B, is that not just asking the same question as twice?
Yeah, because if you just put